First of all, tell us, how did you get hired with TNA? For those of you who are constantly asking, Bruce left the WWE in 2008, did some other stuff, started some businesses, had a run doing some of that stuff, and then when and how did you get hired with TNA when you first went to work with them?
In the fall of 2010, I got a call from Eric Bischoff, and Eric was working, had been at TNA. He and Hulk had gone there. They'd been about a year working with TNA, and Eric called me, asked me what I was doing, and what my relationship was with Vince Russo, and if I had any heat with Russo.
And that stemmed from, believe it or not, once upon a time, you had another podcast.
I did.
And on that podcast, you had been reviewing Raw, and you had been reviewing SmackDown, and you had been reviewing TNA, and maybe you had been a little critical of the TNA product. Is that fair to say?
I was very critical of the TNA product at the time. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But also, I'd been on Steve Austin's podcast, and I simply, when asked about Vince Russo, I commented that the guy that makes the decisions in the WWF, WWE, is the same guy that's made the decisions since the 80s, and the same guy that made them in the 90s, 2000, same guy making them now, same guy that will make them until he takes his last breath, and that's Vince McMahon.
Right.
And while Vince Russo was there, that he came up with some great ideas and had a hell of a run there, but it wasn't as Vince Russo would like you to believe sometimes that he was the end-all, be-all. It was blessed by Vince McMahon, and there was an editor involved and a filter, and that filter being Vince McMahon. And Russo took exception to that. And we talked about it, asked me if I said it. I said, yeah, sure did. Next. And, we got through it. I like Vince Russo. I always thought I got along with Vince Russo. Vince never really had any heat with me. I guess I did with him. But, we talked, asked me to come in and help them out with TV production backstage at their events when they recorded their TVs, and I was happy to do so. I was looking for something to do.
Okay, so two things I want to ask about. One, what was everybody's role? Because you said Hogan, Bischoff, and then Russo, so I want to delve into that. But first, I want you to elaborate on what you just said when you said I did production and backstage and blah, blah, blah. I want you to be very specific. Talk to us like we're third graders for a minute. Break down exactly what your duties would have been when you say production and backstage and whatnot.
I produce the backstage stuff.
Golly, here we go. So when you produced, you're saying you go find the talent, you go find the cameraman.
I had other people go do that.
You go... Will you help me? Why are you doing this?
What? Okay. Production, they have a run sheet. It's some people call it a script. Back in my day, if somebody asked you if you had a script, it meant you had a handful of pills. Nowadays, people ask you got your script, it's a sheet of paper, a bunch of words on it, telling you what to do and what to say.
And Vince Russo would have written this run sheet.
The scree is zipped, yeah.
And the scree is zipped would be back time to be approximately the length of the show. And it would usually have some dialogue in there and maybe a big spot in the match or roughly the number of minutes in a match, whatever was pertinent to the angle.
And in the backstage stuff that you see that's shot out of the arena, those are, you get talent earlier in the day, you shoot those, and I would tell them what to do, tell the camera how to shoot it and what to do from.
So you'd pick like a location, shoot it from this angle,
sure.
Move your head that way, move your hand this way, whatever.
Yes.
Okay. So you're only doing per shot deals here. Was that?
I was only coming in, and at that time I was just working the television tapings.
So it was like a per diem. Here's what we.
Well, not a per diem. It was just a per day, like a
contract.
Yeah.
Like one of the boys.
Exactly.
And so they would fly you from Houston to
Orlando or wherever they were doing TV. Yeah.
And most of the time, so are they doing TV on the road at this point?
Well, when I first went in, they did a pay-per-view in Daytona Beach.
Okay.
Or Tallahassee. Daytona Beach.
Yeah, that was actually, I think, the first one that you were there for.
Right.
So that's 10-10-10.
Correct.
That's going to be Bound for Glory 2010. Ironically, the theme song for that show is written and performed by Billy Corgan.
Imagine that.
Small world.
And I told you I'd never heard any of his music before.
Yeah, that shocked me. I didn't realize you were so damn old that you didn't know any of his 1979 or any of that stuff.
I know Merle Haggard's.
Yeah, well, roll tide. So you're doing just kind of like the day deal, and we kind of ran through some names to start here. You said Hogan, Bischoff, and Russo. Hogan and Bischoff are longtime friends of yours. I know you get along okay with Russo, I guess, now too, but let's just address the elephant in the room. I think a lot of both of those guys, but the narrative would certainly be, oh, Hogan and Bischoff came in and ruined the company. They took all the money and made us go live on Mondays and put us on the road and put us in the red, and they were siphoning off all the money. What was your perception at the time?
Well, the reality of the situation was they brought Hogan in, and Eric came along with him, and they brought Hogan in to broaden the name and get more recognition for TNA by
having Hulk Hogan.
And they were looking for him to get them deals and more sponsorships and also international deals.
His name meant something.
His name still means something.
Sure.
And it was Hulk Hogan. And Eric, with his production background, and Eric had connections, and Eric is a great producer and gets a bad rap. But I think Eric's a damn talented son of a bitch. And they were using them. And, you talk about the Monday night thing that they did when they tried to compete with WWE on Monday nights. At least they had the balls to go do it. At least they were trying something different than what they had been doing that wasn't working.
Right.
So they tried something new. It didn't work. They adjusted and moved on. I would have done that differently if I had been there.
But you respect the balls.
I respect the balls. I respect them for doing something different, changing the norm. And a lot of people, change is difficult for people. So they changed the norm. They challenged the status quo. And they went out and did something different.
It's also easy to armchair quarterback decisions like that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was getting at is, you hear a lot of the younger guys, and this is common. This goes back, decades in wrestling. They always want to talk about who's on top and that they're holding them down and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the guys, I think, had just read so much of the internet and so much of the books and
rumor and innuendo.
Yeah, and so they were led to believe, if Hogan and Bischoff are coming in, they're going to hold us down. But your perception was totally different from that. Is that fair to say?
It is. No, without a doubt. That's definitely fair to say, because they were trying to build it up.
So what was...
their reputations were on the line just as much as everybody else's, if not more so.
Right.
Who gets the credit for it, not working out? Hogan and Bischoff. Do they get the credit for having the balls to step out and do something different?
Right.
That's the part that gets me. And, everybody can sit back and go, they never should have done that. Because, well, they did.
It's easy to say
that. And they own it. It's very easy to say that now. But they weren't the ones there making that decision and saying, hey, let's go out and try this.
It's like a football game, If the play works, it's a great play.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, it's a terrible play.
If you want to sit behind your computer and second guess everything and send your little newsletter out, then
What is Bischoff's official title when you come in?
Good question. I think Eric was executive producer at that point.
What was Hogan's?
Hulk Hogan.
His title was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. He didn't have a title. He was Hulk Hogan.
What did he do?
Hulk, advised and would give his input on creative things. And
so he'd sit in on booking meetings and stuff?
No. Eric sat in on the booking meetings for him, kept him apprised of it, but Hulk would have suggestions. Hulk would sit in on production meetings, day of TV, and give his 2 cents. But they used Hulk for his name. They used Hulk to go out and try and get sponsors.
It was really like almost like a licensing deal. Just permission to
Pretty
use
much.
it. What was Russo's title?
Writer.
Who was the head writer?
Russo.
Okay. So let's run through some other names here. Terry Taylor. He was at the company when you got there. You really don't like that guy.
I don't not like him.
So Timmy,
I like everybody. I just like some people more, some people less.
And you can find out who you like more and less at ProWrestlingTees.com/.
Which just because I love you doesn't mean I like you.
That's right. But you're going to love the way you look in that shirt. Check it out. ProWrestlingTees.com/Prichard. Terry Taylor was there, and he was in talent relations.
Correct.
When you eventually get the nod to be full-time. So when do you make a transition from going on just a per-shot deal to being full-time?
That would have been April, May of 2011. So I'd come in between October and that time, and
so about 6 months later.
Yeah.
So they kind of just use you on TV tapings and pay-per-views and just kind of fill you out. And then once they're comfortable, 6 months later, they extend a full-time offer. Who does that come from?
Dixie.
Does she just meet you at a taping? Does she fly you into Nashville?
They started flying me in, I want to say maybe in January 2011, and I would come in for a day or two and meet with the powers that be. I sat with Creative a couple times. And
just in Nashville?
Just in Nashville, yeah.
Okay, and this is at the Cummins Stations building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, downtown Nashville.
Can you compare those offices to Titan Towers? I'm not saying it as a knock. I'm saying a lot of people listening don't know that there's a difference or have never been to them. Or I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just,
Have you ever been to the Waffle House?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I love the Waffle House.
You do?
Yeah.
And Waffle House is great. You ever been to the Palm?
I have.
Okay. One's a Palm and one's Waffle House.
So you liked them both, but maybe one was a little fancier than the other.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They both provide food.
And steak.
They both feed people. They both provide steak.
Yeah.
Different quality.